Imagine priests wearing the flayed skins of warriors dancing down the streets with the thigh bones of the dead. Picture a sacred mask crafted from a woman's thigh and human sacrifices performed using the snout of a sawfish. As the vibrant and festive Day of the Dead approaches, we'll uncover the astonishing secrets buried beneath the streets of modern-day Mexico City. The origins of this joyous celebration will leave you amazed. Hey allihopa, hi everyone, it's Dragonilla here. With Dia de los Muertos around the corner, I thought we'd dive into the fascinating world of the Aztec Solar Calendar, a key influence on this vibrant celebration. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's have a chat about who the Aztecs actually were. The Aztecs, or Tenochtitlan Mexica, were a powerhouse civilization in Mesoamerica during the 14th and 15th centuries. Tenochtitlan Mexica essentially means the people of Tenochtitlan and the tribe of the Mexica, and Mexica is where the name Mexico comes from. Fun fact, the ruins of Tenochtitlan lie right under modern-day Mexico City, so if you're ever strolling through Mexico City, you're literally walking over Aztec history. They weren't the Mayas, who were another incredible civilization, but one of many indigenous groups in ancient Mexico. There were also Mixtecs, Zapotecs, and more. Despite claiming mainly civilized Toltec origin, the Aztecs originated from the so-called Chichimeca tribes, which means the lineage of dogs. These were semi-nomadic folks migrating from the north, looking for more fertile lands. And after some serious struggles and alliances, they founded Tenochtitlan on an artificial island in Lake Texcoco. They even engineered advanced aqueducts that rivaled ancient Rome. Now, why does this matter today? Well, Dia de los Muertos, celebrated throughout Mexico, has its roots tracing back to these ancient traditions. It's a time when families honor their ancestors with altars, flowers, and offerings, a concept deeply embedded in Aztec culture. So, let's delve into the 18 months of the Aztec Solar Calendar, each packed with rituals, sacrifices, and deep cultural significance. Remember that much of what we know comes from the Spanish conquistadors and missionaries who wrote about the Aztecs, often with their own biases. Many original records have been destroyed, both by foreign invaders and by Aztec leaders eager to make some light historical revisions. So, some details might be hazy, but hopefully you'll still learn a lot of things that you might not even be ready for. Let's go! The first month, Atlacahualo, from February 2nd to February 21st. Kicking off around late February, the Aztecs prepared for the rainy season with ceremonies for Tlaloc, the rain god. They believed that sacrificing children would please Tlaloc and bring them the rains necessary for their crops. Children's tears symbolized rain. Dressed in blue-green outfits with paper wings, children bought from their parents years earlier were paraded around sacred spots while pinched to try and make them cry more. Then, when reaching their final destination, often the temple on top of Mount Tlaloc east of the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan, they ritually had their faces covered in rubber that solidified and were submerged in water while they fought and suffocated. It was thought that this would bring forth rain and that the sacrificial victims would end up happily ever after in Tlaloc's watery paradise. The second month, Tlacaxipehualiztli, Flaying of Men, February 22nd to March 13th. In March, we have the Flaying of Men, honoring Xiuhpohualli, our Lord the Flayed One, the god of renewal and agriculture. During this time, the Aztecs held gladiatorial sacrifices where captured warriors tied to stone platforms fought with fake feather-tipped weapons against elite soldiers. A rigged game, to say the least. If the sacrificial victim somehow managed to beat 2 jaguar warriors and 2 eagle warriors, a final warrior in full armor was ordered to deliver the final blow. Afterward, these sacrificial victims were flayed, skinned, and priests wore their skins for 20 consecutive days to symbolize new life sprouting from the old. They danced around in public displays, carrying thigh bones of the flayed warriors that they gently tapped people with to transfer the energy of the dead warrior onto whoever would receive the blessing. A few days in, once the skins had started tightening and turning yellow, nobody wanted to come close for a blessing anymore. The third month, Tozoztontli, the Lesser Vigil, March 14th to April 2nd. Wrapping up the dry season, which lasted from November to April, the Aztecs were eager for rain. They offered maize and tamales to the gods and sacrificed birds and rabbits. The sacrifices of children to the rain god Tlaloc by drowning continued, all in the hopes of getting on his good side and securing a good harvest. People also performed bloodletting, piercing tongues, ears, and even male genitalia with sharp cactus needles or obsidian glass to offer their own blood to the gods. The fourth month, Huey Tozoztli, the Great Vigil, April 3rd to April 22nd. April brings the early maize harvest. The Aztecs thanked Xiuhpohualli, the goddess of sustenance, and Teotleco, the maize god. They offered the gods fresh corn and blessed seeds for the next planting. Child sacrifices for Tlaloc continued into this month as well. A young woman was chosen to embody Xiuhpohualli. She danced, blessed the fields, and was eventually sacrificed as an offering to the goddess she impersonated. Likely through the most common way of human sacrifice done by the Aztecs, heart extraction atop a pyramid. In that case, she would have been held down on a stone slab, positioned on her back with her chest arched upward, and a priest using a sharp obsidian blade would have swiftly cut below the ribcage. In a powerful moment, the heart, considered the seat of life, was pulled from the chest while still beating. The priest then would have raised it toward the sky as an offering to the gods. After the sacrifice was done, the bodies were often rolled down the pyramid steps and the heart was put in a special vessel or burned. The fifth month, Toxcatl, dry season, April 23rd to May 12th. May's festival was huge. 2 captives were chosen to impersonate Tezcatlipoca, the god of fate, and Xiuhpohualli, the sun and war god, for a year. The Tezcatlipoca impersonator lived in luxury, fine clothes, parades, the works. He often carried and played flutes during public appearances, enchanting the people with music. At year's end, he swapped his finery for warrior gear, married 4 women symbolizing goddesses, and began his final procession. As he walked towards the temple where he were to be sacrificed, he broke his flutes one by one, signifying the end of his earthly delights. He was then sacrificed via heart extraction and his body was shared among nobility for ritual consumption. The Xiuhpohualli stand-in met the same fate. The 6th month, Etzalcualiztli, Feast of the Corn, May 13th to June 1st. June's festival was all about starting the rainy season right. The Aztecs offered jade and human hearts to Tlaloc. They threw jade into lakes and hung it over water, symbolically trying to raise water levels to the same height as the jade. Some accounts mention that 2 individuals who impersonated Tlaloc and Xocotl, Tlaloc's consort, lived together for 20 days and were then sacrificed. Reports also mention 10 to 15 infants sacrificed in the mountains to the same water deities. The 7th month, Tecuilhuitontli, the lesser feast of the Lords, June 2nd to June 21st. Late June into July, this month honored Xiuhpohualli, the Lady of the Salt Workers. Salt workers celebrated with 10 days of dancing, often holding onto the ends of ropes in a special dance particular to this season. A woman was chosen to represent Xiuhpohualli and, unfortunately, was sacrificed using a sawfish mouth to symbolize her connection to the sea. Nobles threw feast for commoners and everyone enjoyed Xocotl, a sacred alcoholic beverage made from the fermented sap of the maguey plant. The 8th month, Tecuilhuitl, the Great Feast of the Lords, June 22nd to July 11th. From late June to July, they honored Xilonen, the corn goddess, and Xochipilli, the god of flowers and art. Food was shared and slaves ritually impersonating Xilonen and Xiuhpohualli, the goddess of motherhood and childbirth, were sacrificed. A young woman chosen to embody Xilonen ran to and from a hill with midwives accompanying her, danced for 30 minutes and was offered drinks whenever she got tired, and was eventually decapitated, symbolizing watering and then harvesting of corn at peak ripeness. The 9th month, Tlaxochimaco, the offering of flowers, July 12th to July 31st. August's festival celebrated flowers and life. People gathered wildflowers, made garlands, and decorated temples to honor Xochipilli. Feasts included corn cakes, turkey, and dog meat. The festival featured dances between young warriors and women deemed prostitutes, and they raised a symbolic tree in the main ceremonial precinct of the city. A victim representing Tecuilhuitl, the underworld god, was sacrificed. Offering a sacrifice to the god of the underworld and death was believed to appease him and ensure that the forces of death would not hinder the prosperity and fertility being celebrated. As the festival came to a close, offerings of flowers and food were made to the dead by the tree, another link to the veneration of the death god. The 10th month, Xocotl Huetzi, the falling of fruits, August 1st to August 20th. From August to September, this festival was dedicated to Xiuhpohualli, the fire and time god. They celebrated the harvest's end with fasting, dancing, and climbing a ceremonial pole to retrieve a sacred dough image. Sacrifices for this month included throwing live captives into bonfires and then retrieving them before death to extract their hearts. This festival, like the one before it, was also linked to death rites. On the final day of the festival, people ascended to the roofs of their houses facing north and called out to their dead ancestors. Xocotl Huetzi's pole climbing might very well have inspired the modern Danza de los Voladores or Dance of the Flyers.
Esta práctica de la ceremonia ritual de voladores no es un acto turístico, no es un acto circense. Para nosotros esto es una herencia cultural y una parte espiritual.
The 11th month, Ochpaniztli, Sweeping of the Roads, August 21st to September 9th. September's festival focused on renewal. After fasting, they sacrificed 2 slaves, one representing Atlacahualo, the water goddess, and a young 12 or 13-year-old girl representing Xocotl, the corn goddess. The main event, though, was the decapitation of a woman past the age of childbirth, embodying Tozoztli, the earth goddess known as our grandmother, then flaying her and having a priest wear her skin, symbolizing the earth's rebirth. The skin of one of her thighs was separately made into a mask to be worn by another person impersonating the goddess' son. On the final day, the entire city underwent a ritual cleansing. Temples, homes, streets, statues, canals, and even steam baths were meticulously cleaned. The Tlatoani distributed insignia and weapons to warriors and nobles, reinforcing their roles. Tlatoani means emperor. The festival concluded with captives tied to wooden frames and shot with arrows, representing the warrior class's rituals of renewal. The 12th month, Teotleco, Return of the Gods, September 10th to September 29th. October's festival was all about the gods returning to earth, especially Teotl, the old fire god. Priests spread out corn flour in temples and came back periodically to look for footprints to signal the god's arrival. Sacrifices included throwing captives into bonfires, pulling them out and extracting their hearts like during Xocotl Huetzi. They also honored Atemoztli, the god of Octli. The 13th month, Tepeilhuitl, Feast of the Mountains, September 30th to October 19th. As the rainy season ended, the Aztecs honored the Lords of Rain. They made figures from amaranth seeds and honey representing sacred mountains and gods. This month's human sacrifices included 2 sisters symbolizing famine and plenty. People consumed sacrificial flesh and dough figures in a great feast, a big thank you to the gods of the harvest. The 14th month, Quecholli, the precious feather, October 20th to November 8th. November's festival was all about hunting and honoring their nomadic Chichimek ancestors. People hunted deer, a rare activity since hunting wasn't common anymore. They also staged symbolic hunts where people dressed as deer were captured and sacrificed and treated like actual deer meat. A nod to their nomadic past. The 15th month, Panquetzaliztli, the raising of banners, November 9th to November 28th. Late November into December, this month was dedicated to Xiuhpohualli, the war and sun god. Banners were raised atop temples, houses, and in public spaces as visual tribute to Xiuhpohualli. A dough image of the god was made and parades were held. Many warrior captives were sacrificed after dancing and singing, and their flesh was distributed among the community for ritualistic eating. They also held races and drank Xocotl. The festival ended with the ritual eating of the dough image of Xiuhpohualli. The 16th month, Atemoztli, the falling of waters, November 19th to December 18th. December brought mild rains, so they honored Tlaloc and its rain-bringing helpers. Everyone performed bloodletting and abstained from sexual activity. They made dough images of the gods and killed them with a weaving stick. The nobility made offerings in the mountains, often choosing slaves to be adorned with feathers and sacrificed. The 17th month, Tititl, stretching, December 19th to January 7th. In January, they honored Tecuilhuitl, the old earth goddess. A priest dressed as her and a woman embodied her, the woman eventually being offered as a sacrificial victim. The victim's head was cut off after her death, and the priest portraying Tecuilhuitl danced around holding it by the hair. Merchants also sacrificed slaves to Xocotl, the god of commerce, during the initiation rites to the Merchants' Guild, which also took place during this month. The 18th month, Izcalli, Rebirth, January 8th to January 27th. February's final month was dedicated to Xocotl, the fire god and lord of the year. They honored elders, made amaranto images, and celebrated with Xocotl. Tamales were given as gifts and offered to the gods by throwing them into the hearth fire. Children received godparents, symbolizing new beginnings. Nemontemi, dead, useless days. And finally, we have the 5 dead days at the end of the year that were considered unlucky and dangerous. People stayed at home, whispered, and avoided cooking or having sex. Fires were extinguished and they ate cold, pre-prepared tortillas once a day. It was a time of reflection, hoping that the new year would return. And there we go! Was it interesting? Did you have fun? Maybe subscribe. See ya!